The massive silver spaceship hung in Earth's orbit like a gleaming needle against the black velvet of space. Inside, Chief Researcher Reed of the Galactic Council pressed his four-fingered hand against the observation window, staring down at the blue planet below. "Such a primitive world," he muttered, his scaled skin reflecting the soft blue light from nearby monitors. "Look at all that green. Inefficient photosynthesis everywhere." Behind him, Earth botanist Tom Wilson shifted uncomfortably in his chair. The humans had been hosting the alien scientists for 3 weeks now, and their constant dismissal of Earth's ecosystem was getting old. "With respect, sir," Tom said, clearing his throat, "our plants have evolved over millions of years to be perfectly adapted to our world." Reed turned, his silver eyes narrowing. "Perfectly adapted? Your plants waste energy. They compete with each other chaotically. Some even strangle their neighbors to death." He waved a hand dismissively. "On our worlds, we've engineered perfect harmony." The other alien scientists in the room nodded in agreement. They had been collecting samples of Earth's plant life for their biological archives, treating each specimen like a curious relic from a backward world. Tom watched as they placed another sample into their storage unit, a cutting of kudzu vine he had helped them collect. The plant's green tendrils seemed to reach out even as they sealed the container. "You should be careful with that one," Tom warned, remembering the devastation kudzu had caused in parts of his country. "It's incredibly invasive. We call it the vine that ate the South for a reason." The alien scientists laughed, a strange chittering sound that made Tom's skin crawl. "Invasive," Reed said, amused. "Mr. Wilson, we have terraformed entire planets. We have engineered plants that can survive in the vacuum of space. What harm could one primitive Earth vine do?" As if to demonstrate their superior technology, Reed pressed a button on the storage unit. The kudzu sample was bathed in a purple light, and complex readings appeared on nearby screens. "See," Reed pointed to the data. "Your kudzu's growth rate is nothing compared to our engineered species. It takes days to cover small areas. Our plants can transform entire landscapes in hours." Tom stood up, trying one last time. "That's not the point. Kudzu is hardy. It adapts. It finds ways to survive that we never expected. We've been fighting it for over a century, and—" "That's exactly why your world needs our help," Reed interrupted. "A century to contain one plant. We could solve your kudzu problem in days with our technology." The other scientists began packing up their equipment, clearly done with the conversation. Tom watched helplessly as they prepared to transport their samples to their main research station in orbit. "Would you like to see our research facility?" Reed asked, suddenly playing the gracious host. "We can show you how real botanical science works." Tom nodded slowly. Maybe if he saw their containment protocols, he could spot any weaknesses before it was too late. "I'd like that very much." As they boarded the transport ship, Tom looked back at Earth through the window. The planet looked so peaceful from up here, its green forests and blue oceans hiding the constant battle between humans and invasive species that raged on its surface. Little did the aliens know, they were about to learn why Earth's plants had survived everything nature could throw at them. They were about to learn why kudzu had earned its fearsome reputation. And they were about to learn it the hard way. Reed's voice came over the ship's speakers. "Prepare for docking with Research Station 1. And Mr. Wilson, prepare to see what real scientific advancement looks like." Tom buckled his safety harness and closed his eyes. He had a feeling these aliens were about to get a harsh lesson in respecting Earth's ecosystem. Sometimes, he thought, the most dangerous things come in the most unassuming packages. Research Station 1 was a marvel of alien engineering. Its pristine white halls curved in impossible ways, and strange plants grew in perfectly controlled chambers along every wall. Tom Wilson followed Reed through the station, trying not to show how impressed he was. "This is where we improve on nature's mistakes," Reed said, stopping at a large laboratory door. "Watch and learn how real scientists work." The lab itself was massive, filled with rows of experimental chambers. Each one contained plants from different worlds, all modified to grow in specific patterns. Tom noticed how each plant stayed exactly where it was placed, not a leaf out of position. "And here," Reed said, pointing to an empty chamber, "is where we'll perfect your primitive kudzu." The alien scientists moved with practiced efficiency. They placed the kudzu sample in the chamber and began their work. Strange machines hummed, casting purple and green lights over the plant. "First, we'll remove its inefficient growth limitations," one scientist announced. "Then we'll improve its photosynthesis rate." Tom stepped forward. "Wait. Those limitations evolved for a reason. They're safety measures." "Safety measures?" Reed laughed. "From what? Growing too well?" He turned to his team. "Proceed with the modifications." Over the next few hours, Tom watched in growing horror as the aliens tinkered with the kudzu's genetic code. They were changing things they didn't understand, removing natural barriers that had evolved over millions of years. The kudzu in the chamber began to grow. At first, it seemed normal. Then Tom noticed something wrong. The leaves were getting bigger. The vines were growing thicker. And it wasn't stopping. "Fascinating," Reed said, checking the readings. "It's adapting to our modifications much faster than expected." "That's not fascinating. That's dangerous," Tom warned. "Kudzu already grows a foot per day on Earth. What have you done to its growth rate?" Reed checked more readings. "We've improved it, of course. It should now grow 3 times faster, with better nutrient absorption and—" A loud crack interrupted him. The kudzu's vines had grown thick enough to crack the chamber's viewing glass. "Impossible," one scientist muttered. "That glass is designed to contain our strongest specimens." The plant was changing before their eyes. Its leaves had developed a metallic sheen, adapting to the artificial light. The vines were growing in patterns Tom had never seen before, reaching for the station's power conduits. "Shut it down," Tom urged. "Shut it down now." Reed finally looked worried. "Initiate containment protocols," he ordered. "Full lockdown of Laboratory 7. Metal shutters began closing around the chamber, but vines had already wedged into the gaps. The kudzu was learning, adapting to its new environment faster than anyone thought possible. "It's tapping into our power systems," a technician shouted. "The growth rate is still increasing." Tom watched as the alien scientists scrambled to contain their creation. They had given the kudzu everything it needed to thrive in space: better energy absorption, faster growth, and no natural limitations. "We need to destroy it," Tom said firmly. "Right now, before it gets worse." Reed's silver eyes were wide with fear now. We can't. The chamber's sterilization systems aren't responding. It's already interfering with our controls." Through the cracked glass, they could see the kudzu filling the chamber. Its vines were weaving themselves into complex patterns, creating structures that looked almost intelligent. "What have we done?" Reed whispered. The lights in the laboratory flickered. On the monitors, warning signals flashed as the plant began affecting more station systems. Tom backed toward the door. "On Earth, we learned the hard way not to underestimate invasive species, but you've created something much worse." The final safety glass gave way with a thunderous crack. As alarms began blaring throughout the station, Tom realized this was just the beginning. The aliens hadn't just improved kudzu, they had created a monster, and it was still growing. The emergency sirens on Research Station 1 screamed through every corridor. Red warning lights flashed as crews of alien scientists ran in panic. The modified kudzu had broken through not just one lab, but was now spreading through the station's maintenance tunnels. "All personnel, evacuate laboratory section, immediately," the station's AI announced in a calm voice that contrasted with the chaos below. "Containment breach in progress." Tom Wilson followed Reed and a group of scientists through the winding corridors, watching in horror as green tendrils began creeping through seams in the walls. The kudzu was no longer just a plant. It had become something else entirely. "The maintenance bots aren't responding," a technician shouted, frantically typing on a floating screen. The vine has taken control of their systems. Reed's scaled face had lost its usual superior expression. Impossible. Our systems are completely secured against. He stopped as they rounded a corner. The corridor ahead was completely filled with kudzu, its leaves now sporting a metallic sheen that reflected the emergency lights. The vines had woven themselves into complex patterns, forming what looked like circuit boards made of living plant matter. "It's learning," Tom said quietly. "You gave it the ability to adapt, and now it's adapting to your technology." Behind them, more vines crept along the floor. The group turned and ran down another corridor, but Tom could see the plant was hurting them, blocking certain paths, forcing them in specific directions. "Engineering deck," Reed gasped as they ran. "We can trigger an emergency purge of the affected sections." They reached the engineering control room, but the scene inside made them freeze. The kudzu had already arrived. Vines wrapped around control panels, leaves pressed against screens, somehow interfacing with the station's computers. "The escape pods," a young scientist suggested. "We need to evacuate the station." They rushed to the evacuation deck, passing more and more areas overtaken by the intelligent plant. Tom noticed something disturbing. The kudzu wasn't killing anyone. It was simply growing around them, learning from them, using their technology. "Escape pods ready for launch," the AI announced as they reached the evacuation deck. "Warning, biological contamination detected in pods 3 through 7. It's in the escape pods too." Reed's voice cracked with fear. Tom looked closer at the pods and saw fine green filaments growing in their seams. "You don't understand," he said. "This is what kudzu does. It doesn't just grow, it spreads. On Earth, it spreads through seeds, fragments, even tiny pieces of root. But these pods are sealed." Reed protested. "Your modifications made it smarter," Tom explained. "It's probably already spread microscopic spores throughout the station's air filtration system." As if confirming his words, the station's AI spoke again. "Warning, biological material detected in primary air filtration. Secondary filtration. Tertiary filtration. Warning, emergency systems compromised." The remaining scientists began piling into the untainted escape pods. Tom watched as Reed's hands shook trying to input the launch codes. "The colony worlds," Tom said suddenly. "You can't go to the colony worlds. If even one spore makes it to a planet." But it was too late. The escape pods were already launching, shooting away from the station in different directions. Tom knew that despite their best efforts, some of the kudzu had to be going with them. The plant they had modified was now heading toward populated worlds. Through the evacuation deck's windows, Tom could see the station's exterior. Green patches were visible now, spreading across the hull like a living infection. The kudzu had adapted to survive in space, just as Reed had bragged their engineered plants could do. "What have we created?" Reed whispered, watching his life's work being consumed by Earth's primitive plant. Tom shook his head. "You didn't create this. You just removed all the safeguards evolution put in place to control it." And now, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. They both knew that this was just the beginning. The modified kudzu was loose in space, heading toward unsuspecting worlds, armed with all the advanced adaptations the aliens had given it. The invasion had begun. 3 months after the research station incident, Tom Wilson stood before the Galactic Council's emergency session. The massive chamber was filled with representatives from 100 worlds, all watching in horror as footage played on the giant screens. The images showed an entire alien city being consumed by metallic green kudzu. The plant moved like a living wave, covering buildings in minutes. Its vines had evolved to process metal, concrete, and even energy fields. "Colony World Beta 7 has gone dark," announced a blue-skinned council member. "That's the 3rd world this month." Tom stepped forward. "The modified kudzu is adapting faster than we predicted. It's not just surviving on your worlds, it's learning from them." New footage appeared on the screens. The kudzu had developed structures that looked like solar panels, but made entirely of leaves. In some places, it had grown into massive towers that captured and processed energy directly from nearby stars. "Impossible," muttered one council member. "No plant could evolve so quickly." "You gave it that ability," Tom reminded them. "You removed its natural limitations and gave it the power to adapt to any environment. Now it's using your own technology against you." Reed, who had been quiet until now, stood up. His scales had dulled from stress over the past months. "The spores," he said quietly. "They're in everything. Our ships, our suits, our cargo. We can't stop it from spreading." More reports flooded in. The kudzu had reached agricultural worlds, where it overwhelmed the carefully engineered crop systems. It had invaded industrial planets, where it learned to process pollution into energy. Even desert worlds weren't safe. The plant simply adapted to use the harsh sunlight and minimal moisture. Colony World Gamma 3 reports the kudzu has developed crystalline structures. A technician announced. It's building something." The screen showed new images. The kudzu had evolved beyond just spreading. It was creating vast networks, linking different parts of each world it invaded. Some scientists suggested it was developing a form of collective intelligence, learning from every world it conquered. "We've lost contact with the outer colonies," someone shouted. "The communication networks are down." Tom watched as panic spread through the council chamber. These aliens, who had mocked Earth's primitive ecosystem, were watching their advanced civilization being overwhelmed by a plant they had dismissed. "The research station," Reed said suddenly. "Show them what happened to the research station." The final images appeared on screen. Research Station 1, now completely transformed. The kudzu had taken over every system, every chamber. It had learned from the alien technology and created something entirely new, a hybrid of plant and machine that was now drifting through space, spreading spores to every world it passed. "We found these readings," Reed continued, bringing up data streams. "The kudzu isn't just spreading randomly anymore. It's coordinating. Each new world it takes over becomes part of a network. It's building something across our entire sector of space." The council chamber erupted in panicked discussions. Some suggested evacuating entire worlds. Others wanted to destroy infected planets from orbit. None of their ideas would work, and Tom knew why. "You don't understand what you're dealing with," he said, his voice cutting through the chaos. "On Earth, we've been fighting kudzu for over a century. We learned that you can't just kill it. You can't just run from it. You have to understand it." The room fell silent as a new alert flashed across the screens. Another world had gone dark. The kudzu's spread was accelerating. "We need help," Reed admitted, looking at Tom. "We need Earth's help. You've fought this thing before. You know its weaknesses." Tom nodded slowly. He had been expecting this. "I'll contact our botanical warfare division. But you should know, even on Earth, we never fully defeated kudzu. We just learned to contain it." The council members looked at each other in fear. They had unleashed something they couldn't control, and now their only hope lay with the primitive world they had once mocked. The kudzu continued its silent spread across the stars, growing, learning, evolving. And it was far from finished. The room fell silent as Dr. Alice Park, Earth's leading expert on invasive species, walked into the Galactic Council's war room. Behind her came specialists from every continent, each carrying decades of experience fighting aggressive plants. "This is your elite team?" Reed asked Tom, looking at the simple white coats and basic tools they carried. "Where is their advanced equipment?" "Sometimes the old ways work best," Tom replied, watching as Dr. Park spread out paper maps of infected worlds. "We've been fighting kudzu with basic tools for generations." Dr. Park pointed to the spread patterns displayed on the star charts. "Your modified kudzu is following the same patterns we see on Earth. It's just doing it on a galactic scale now." The alien scientists crowded around as she explained. The kudzu was spreading along trade routes, just like it had once spread along Earth's highways. It was adapting to different environments, just as it had adapted to different climates on Earth. But how do we stop it? Reed asked desperately. We've tried energy weapons, radiation, even artificial black holes. Nothing works. Because you're thinking like engineers, not farmers, Dr. Park said. She pulled out a soil sample from an Earth kudzu patch. Look at this. What do you see? The alien scientists peered at the dirt. Contaminated soil, one said, full of primitive microorganisms. Exactly. Dr. Park smiled. Those primitive microorganisms are what keep kudzu in check on Earth. They're natural predators that evolved alongside it. Tom watched understanding dawn on Reed's face. You mean we need to fight it with bacteria? Not just bacteria, another Earth scientist added. We need a whole ecosystem. Fungi, insects, soil chemistry, everything that naturally controls kudzu's growth. The Earth team set up their equipment. Simple microscopes, soil testing kits, and cultivation trays. They began growing cultures from Earth's soil, breeding the tiny organisms that had kept kudzu in check for centuries. But the kudzu has evolved, Reed protested. It's different now. Then our solutions will evolve too, Dr. Park said firmly. We'll adapt Earth's ecosystem just like you adapted the kudzu. But we'll do it naturally, the way nature intended. Over the next few days, the Earth scientists worked tirelessly. They studied samples from infected worlds, tested different combinations of natural predators, and designed targeted ecological responses. Look at this, Dr. Park called out one morning. She pointed to a petri dish where Earth bacteria were breaking down the modified kudzu's metallic structures. The plant may have evolved, but Earth's microbes still recognize it as food. More breakthroughs followed. They discovered that certain fungi could disrupt the kudzu's new communication networks. Soil chemistry from Earth's forests could slow its growth. Even simple earthworms could help break down its advanced structures. It's not just about killing it, Tom explained to the watching council. It's about restoring balance. The kudzu is out of control because you removed all its natural limitations. We're putting those limitations back. The alien scientists watched in amazement as the Earth team prepared their first test. On a small infected moon, they released their carefully crafted ecosystem. Within days, the kudzu's spread began to slow. This is remarkable, Reed admitted, watching through telescopes as Earth's primitive life forms began to reclaim the moon. All this time, we thought we had to fight technology with technology. Dr. Park shook her head. Nature has been balancing itself for billions of years. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the best. The Council voted unanimously to implement Earth's plan across infected worlds. Ships that once carried weapons now transported bacteria, fungi, and soil samples. Earth's ecosystem was about to go galactic. We'll need to monitor every world carefully, Dr. Park warned. This isn't a quick fix. It's about establishing a new balance. Tom looked at Reed, who was studying the jar of earthworms with newfound respect. The aliens were finally learning what humans had known all along. Nature was not something to be conquered, but something to be understood. The real work was just beginning. The massive alien transport ship hovered over the infected colony world of Prime 2. Its cargo hold wasn't filled with weapons or technology, but with something the aliens once considered primitive: Earth soil and its tiny inhabitants. Remember, Tom Wilson called over the communication system. We have to start at the edges and work our way in, just like fighting a forest fire. Below them, the modified kudzu covered everything in sight. Its metallic green vines had built massive structures that pulsed with stolen energy. The once busy spaceport was now a twisted garden of living metal and plant matter. Dr. Park checked the readings on her simple soil monitoring device. The kudzu has completely changed the soil chemistry here. We'll need to adjust our mixture. Teams of Earth scientists, now working alongside alien experts, began their carefully planned attack. They started by dropping loads of specially prepared soil around the edges of the kudzu growth. Each batch contained billions of microscopic allies, bacteria, fungi, and tiny insects from Earth. "Look there," Reed pointed excitedly. "The earthworms are actually eating through the metallic structures." He was right. The humble earthworms, enhanced slightly by Earth scientists to handle the metallic plants, were slowly breaking down the kudzu's advanced structures. They processed the modified plant matter just like they had processed regular kudzu for millions of years. "Now for Phase 2, Dr. Park announced. Teams moved in with simple tools, shovels, rakes, and bags of seeds. They began planting competing vegetation, species chosen from both Earth and alien worlds that could challenge the kudzu for resources. "The kudzu is trying to adapt," an alien scientist warned, pointing to readings showing rapid genetic changes in the plant. "That's exactly what we wanted," Tom smiled. "Because now it has to fight on multiple fronts. It can't adapt to everything at once." He was right. As the kudzu tried to defend against the earthworms, it became more vulnerable to the fungi. When it changed to resist the fungi, the bacteria would attack its weakened structures. Earth's ecosystem was proving to be more adaptable than any single organism. "The network connections are failing," Reed reported, watching as the kudzu's vast communication system began to break down. "It's losing its collective intelligence." The process was slow but steady. Day by day, the Earth-based solution pushed back the kudzu's advance. The plant that had terrified the galaxy was being defeated by microscopic life forms and simple competing plants. But not everyone was happy with the progress. "This is taking too long," complained one council member, watching from orbit. "We should use our weapons to speed it up." "That would only make things worse," Dr. Park explained patiently. "We're not just removing the kudzu. We're establishing a new balanced ecosystem. Rush it, and we risk creating another disaster." The evidence of success was becoming clear. Patches of the planet's original surface began to reappear. The kudzu's metallic towers started to crumble, broken down by millions of tiny decomposers. Earth's primitive life forms were winning through sheer persistence and numbers. "We're ready to begin the final phase," Tom announced after several weeks of progress. Teams moved in with the last component, carefully chosen insect species. Like the other organisms, these had been slightly enhanced to handle the modified kudzu, but their basic nature remained the same. They were the final piece in recreating a balanced ecosystem. Reed watched in amazement as simple caterpillars began eating through leaves that his most advanced weapons couldn't damage. "All this time," he said quietly, "we thought advancement meant making things more complex. But you've shown us that sometimes the simplest solutions are the most powerful." Dr. Park nodded, checking readings from her soil samples. "Nature had billions of years to figure out how to keep things in balance. We just had to trust in that wisdom." As the sun set on Prime 2, the planet was transforming. Where there had once been an unstoppable alien threat, a new ecosystem was taking root. It wasn't purely Earth's, nor was it the original alien environment. It was something new, a balanced blend of both worlds. The kudzu was finally being tamed, not by force, but by the patient, persistent power of nature itself. 1 year after the kudzu crisis began, the Galactic Council gathered for a historic session. The massive chamber looked different now. Living plants from Earth decorated the walls, carefully chosen species that worked together in perfect balance. Tom Wilson stood at the podium, looking out at representatives from hundreds of worlds. Next to him, Reed adjusted the new living metal on his chest, a small, controlled patch of kudzu, now transformed into a symbol of the bridge between Earth and alien plant science. "The last infected world was stabilized yesterday," Tom announced. "The modified kudzu is now part of controlled ecosystems on 37 worlds, working in harmony with both Earth species and local life forms." Screens around the chamber showed the transformed planets. Where there had once been chaos and destruction, there were now thriving environments. The kudzu's metallic structures had been broken down and reformed into natural gardens that blended technology with biology. Dr. Park stepped forward with her final report. We've successfully established self-regulating ecosystems on every affected world. The kudzu is still present, but it's no longer a threat. It's become part of something greater, a balanced network of life. The council members watched in amazement as she showed them time-lapse footage. Earthworms moved through enriched soil. Enhanced beetles kept plant growth in check. Fungi and bacteria worked together to maintain the perfect balance. It was a dance of life that had been perfected on Earth over millions of years. We've learned much from this crisis, Reed admitted, addressing his fellow aliens. We thought we could improve on nature by making it simpler, more controlled. Earth showed us that true strength lies in complexity and balance. Tom smiled as he remembered the aliens' first dismissive comments about Earth's primitive ecosystem. Now they were using Earth soil samples as templates for their own worlds, studying the complex relationships between species that they had once ignored. Earth has proven itself more than worthy of full council membership, the head counselor announced. Their understanding of ecological systems has transformed our approach to planetary development. The vote was unanimous. Earth was welcomed as a full member of the Galactic Council, with special responsibility for ecological management across the galaxy. New research stations were already being built, where Earth scientists worked side by side with alien experts. But we still have much to learn, Dr. Park reminded everyone. Nature is always evolving, always changing. Our job is not to control it, but to understand and work with it. In the station's new botanical gardens, the original kudzu sample was kept in a special display. Now carefully controlled by its natural predators, it served as a reminder of both the danger of arrogance and the power of natural solutions. We're establishing a new Galactic Environmental Council, Reed announced, a joint effort between Earth and alien scientists to study and protect ecosystems across the galaxy. And he added with a smile, Earth will lead this initiative. The chamber erupted in applause. It was a moment that would have seemed impossible a year ago. Advanced alien civilizations looking to primitive Earth for guidance. Tom walked through the chamber's garden after the ceremony, touching the living plants that now represented the new partnership between worlds. The kudzu crisis had nearly destroyed civilization, but it had also built a bridge between Earth and the stars. Ready for the next challenge? Dr. Park asked, joining him. She held up a sample from a distant world, another ecosystem that needed Earth's help to find its balance. Always, Tom replied. After all, every problem is an opportunity to learn something new. Above them, through the chamber's clear dome, they could see ships departing for distant worlds. Each carried seeds, soil samples, and tiny creatures from Earth, humble ambassadors that would help bring life and balance to the galaxy. The stars had never seemed more welcoming, and Earth's simple wisdom had never been more valued. Sometimes, Tom thought, the most powerful force in the universe isn't advanced technology or weapons, but the patient, persistent power of nature itself. And that was a lesson the galaxy would never forget.